In today's lesson, I'm going to give you 5 things to make sure you can hit your driver just like that one and start finding more fairways. Let's get stuck in right now. So 5 things that you need to do to make sure you're getting the most out of the big stick. And tip number 1, first things first, as you know from the channel if you've watched it a long time, the strike is the king. So we need to monitor where we're hitting the golf ball from. As we can see there from the little bit of water, we can see that that one came from the middle. So whether it's putting the athlete's foot spray on there, dry shampoo, or even just marking your golf ball with a marker pen, if you've not got a black face driver, if you can actually get some marker pen on the ball and see where you're getting it from, that is going to help us hit it. Because the problem is, if we're getting it out of the top, the bottom, the top, the heel or the toe, that's going to affect how the golf ball actually flies. Drivers aren't like irons, they don't have a straight face. We actually have something called roll and bulge on a driver. So as we can see there, the face isn't quite straight as we're looking at it. So depending on where you hit it from, it's going to affect the ball flight. From the heel, we would see more slice. From the toe, we would see more hook. From the bottom, we would see something that launches low and spins up. And from the top, we would see something that launches high and gets less spin. So number 1, make sure you're monitoring where you strike it from. Ideally, we want to see that we're hitting it just above the center line, somewhere in and around here every time that we're getting it. Monitor it, and it might be, as you stand to it, you might be a little bit too far away, a little bit too close, and that could be causing problems. Check your balance. A lot of problems that I see when people aren't getting a good strike is because we've got the driver in hand, so obviously we're going to try and hit it as hard as possible, and we get this going on where we're falling all over the show. We need to make sure we are staying in balance and getting the middle. Number 2, once we've monitored our strike, we need to actually tee the ball up at the appropriate height. A lot of people would generally say that, as a rule of thumb, the ball needs to be above the top line here. So we get a lot of people pegging it up this high above. The problem is, once you've monitored your strike, if you're someone who hits it a little bit more towards the bottom, you probably need to tee it up a little bit different to someone who is hitting it out of the top. So if you're someone who actually hits down ever so slightly on the driver, if you've got the ball pegged up really high and you get a little bit of a descending blow, the club coming into the ball in this manner, you might see that you get a lot of sky marks, a lot of your paint being chipped off there. If you're someone who actually gets a really ascending as opposed to descending angle of attack and you've got it pegged down a little bit low, you might see that you're hitting it a little bit more off the bottom. So wherever you're striking it from, make sure you've got the ball teed up at the appropriate height. Just give it a go, try and see which one finds the middle of the face a little bit more often. You can get the graduated tees as well, the castle tees that are pink, grey, orange, whichever colour it is. Give it a go and see which one gives you the best strike location. For me, it's here, and as I actually get this one ripped away, what we should see, if I've now got this in the right spot and I make the same swing, we should get it a little bit more from the middle of the club. Slightly toey that one for me there, but actually it's not too bad. Again, a little bit more from the middle of the driver. So tip number 1, monitor that strike. Tip number 2, make sure we've got it teed up at the right height. Tip number 3, you may have noticed I did something with my setup there. The driver is different to the iron. We want to make sure as we address this golf ball now, we're giving ourselves the best chance to approach it in the right way. So when I stand to the golf ball, firstly, I'm going to change my ball position from what I would have with an iron. I wouldn't see that the ball is slap bang in the middle of my stance. I actually want to put it more towards the lead side of my stance here. So I see it actually being placed just inside my lead heel as I stand to it. Also, what I'm going to see is that my shoulders start to point up to the sky a little bit more. So as I address it now, I'd be behind the golf ball here with the majority of the top half of my body. And as I hit it, I'd want to feel that I stay behind it as well, feeling that I've got the same angle created from setup into impact, not seeing that I would do like I do with an iron and hit down into it. If we actually just walk around here, what we'll see is that when I address the golf ball in the proper manner, it looks like I'm about to launch it up into the sky. It doesn't look like I'm going to hit down on it here. It looks like I'm going to actually send it up over the tree as I go through. And that takes us nicely into tip 4. When we are hitting driver, if we want to maximize our distance, we need to try and see that we are hitting up on the golf ball. And to do that, a really simple little thing you can do even at home in your back garden, if you're not hitting any balls, if you were to just place something like your driver head cover here and you have a couple of tee pegs, we need to get the skill of not actually banging down like we would do with an iron. We need to feel that we're getting the sole of the club, so this part of the golf club here, brushing the top of the tee peg. So as I take my address and I make my swings, as you can probably just hear on the microphone there, I'm just clipping the top of the tee. And what I want to see is that I can do this constantly with one tee peg and not see that I'm breaking it by knocking it down. By having the little aid in front of us here, I can give myself an idea that I want to swing up over the top of this, not down into the tee and smashing into it. So I would see my good setup where I get a little bit of tilt and then get a little brush on the tee peg, feeling that I'm grazing it and leaving it generally into the ground and not popping it out. So let's give that a little hit away. So we're going to leave my head cover there, move it up ever so slightly, pop in there a bit more, and I'm going to try and leave the tee peg in as I hit this one now. And a pretty nice drive there, just a little bit too much down on it, as we can see there. I've actually snapped the tee peg, so that's something that I need to work on. I need to try and get a little bit more up on it. Let's take a look at the final thing and see what it is to help us hit our driver better. If you're enjoying the video as well, guys, do remember, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notifications. I want you to get better at golf, and you're going to do that by joining me for your free lessons every week here on the channel. Hit the button, turn on the bells. Let's get looking at the 5th and final thing we need to do to hit our drivers better. So we've covered strike, tee position, setup, hitting up on it. We now need to talk about the release. And what we need to understand is, like I said a moment ago with the setup, we're not hitting down on it like we would do with an iron. What we see from the players who are fantastic at driving the ball great distances is tremendous club head speed, because they release the driver at the right time. What I would see from a lot of my students would be that they get the club in the hands, it's the big one, we're going to try and hit it as hard as we can, and all the power comes from up here. So we start to throw the club early, and by the time we get down to the golf ball, we're actually slowing down a little bit. We're not letting the club head pass the hands at the bottom and generate more speed as we go through. When we watch the golf on TV, we might hear them when they're having a practice swing. We get a bit of a whoosh of the air there, and a great way for you to get this feeling would be if you were to take an alignment cane like so, or if you had an old shaft. If you're someone who throws it very quickly from the top here, there's not much of a whip going on. We feel that all the weight there goes pretty much at the top, and by the time we get down to the bottom, we feel a little bit jumped up and we feel that we're slowing down. What we need to try and do is learn to get the feeling of the wrists unloading closer towards the impact area and get this really big whooshing of the cane as we go by. I'm not throwing it at the top and slowing down at the bottom. I'm storing all my leverage and then using it down as I get towards the bottom of the golf swing. If I can translate that into my golf swing when I've got my driver, what we should see is that we get optimum club head speed, and that is going to help me get a better delivery of the golf club and get more distance out of it. So let's take a go. So I've monitored my strike, I've got it pegged up at the right height, I've got my setup in the right points here, I'm trying to hit up on it, and I'm going to release it down at the bottom, and we should see that we get a lovely drive down the middle of the fairway here. So good setup, release it at the bottom, and that is the best one of the video. Straight down the middle, 5 things that you need to do with your driver. Guys, give them a watch again, get using them, and I'll see you in the next lesson.